Welcome to Fiction Flux. Today, we're diving into an exciting new fanfiction. What if Female Deku got the Sharingan? Imagine a world where Izumi Midoriya's journey takes a dark and emotional turn, filled with vengeance, power, and redemption. Let's not waste any time and get started with this epic story. In a quiet city illuminated by the silver light of a crescent moon, Izumi Midoriya walked home with her mother, Inko. The day had been like any other, filled with teasing from classmates for being quirkless, the sharp sting of Confronting Bakugo's taunts, and the pitying stares of teachers who saw her as a failure in a society where power defined your worth. But tonight, everything changed. As Izumi opened the door to their small apartment, a chilling silence greeted her. The lights flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Her heart sank as she stepped inside, her mother's hesitant voice calling out, "Is someone there?" The answer came not in words but in the sight of her father, Hisashi Midoriya, lying lifeless on the floor, his eyes wide with terror. Blood pooled around him, a crimson river that soaked into the cheap carpet. Above his body stood a figure clad in black, face obscured by a mask. The killer turned towards them, his blade dripping with fresh blood. Before Inko could scream, the figure lunged. Izumi was shoved aside by her mother, who took the blade's strike head-on. She crumpled to the floor, blood spilling from her chest as her last words echoed in Izumi's ears, "Run, Izumi." But Izumi didn't run. She froze, tears streaming down her face, fear and rage twisting inside her like a storm. Her vision blurred as the masked figure approached her, blade raised for the final blow. In that moment, the world seemed to slow, and Izumi's anguish boiled over into something primal. A searing pain erupted in her eyes, burning hotter than anything she had ever felt. The killer paused, startled, as her emerald green eyes turned crimson. 3 tomo swirled in each eye, spinning like a storm. The Sharingan had awakened. Izumi screamed, and the world responded. The killer froze mid-strike, paralyzed by an illusion so vivid it blurred the line between reality and nightmare. Izumi's newfound power forced him to relive the pain and fear he had inflicted on others. He dropped the blade and collapsed, clutching his head, begging for mercy. But Izumi had none to give. Her heart, once filled with kindness, had shattered into something dark and unrecognizable. The killer's screams faded as his body went limp, his mind lost in the endless torment of her genjutsu. The following days were a blur. The police arrived, questioning her about what had happened. They ruled it as an attack by an unknown assailant and praised Izumi for defending herself. But Izumi knew there was more to the story. The killer hadn't acted alone, she had overheard him muttering names before he succumbed to her power. Names of people who had orchestrated the attack on her family. Izumi's grief transformed into a singular purpose, revenge. Over the next year, Izumi trained relentlessly. By day, she played the role of a grieving, powerless girl. By night, she honed her Sharingan, unlocking new abilities and mastering its illusions. She discovered that the people who had conspired against her family were connected to a powerful underground organization that dealt in quirk experiments and assassinations. Her first target was a man named Kurosawa, a scientist who had been experimenting on quirkless individuals to extract dormant genetic potential. Izumi tracked him to a hidden laboratory. As she infiltrated the facility, her Sharingan allowed her to anticipate every guard's move, dodging bullets and neutralizing threats with precision. When she finally confronted Kurosawa, she cast him into a genjutsu so horrifying that he confessed everything before succumbing to madness. Each name she learned led her closer to the truth and further down the path of darkness. Her final target was none other than Confronting Bakugo. Izumi had uncovered that Katsuki's father had been one of the organization's key financiers, and Katsuki himself had unknowingly passed information about Izumi's family to the group. Whether intentional or not, he was complicit in their deaths. The confrontation took place at UA High School during training hours. The students watched in shock as Izumi, now clad in a dark cloak, stormed onto the field, her Sharingan glowing like crimson fire. "Kachan," she called, her voice cold and emotionless. "Do you remember what you said to me all those years ago? That I was a useless, quirkless nobody." Bakugo turned, confusion giving way to recognition and then anger. "Deku, what the hell are you doing here? I'm here to finish what you started, she said, activating her Mangekyo Sharingan. Bakugo charged at her, explosions crackling in his palms, but Izumi was faster. Her Sharingan allowed her to read his every move, and she countered with surgical precision. She cast him into a genjutsu, forcing him to relive every moment of pain and humiliation he had ever inflicted on her. When the illusion ended, Bakugo collapsed to his knees, tears streaming down his face. I'm sorry, he whispered, broken. Izumi stared at him, her expression unreadable. For a moment, the old Izumi resurfaced, the one who had admired him despite everything. But then she remembered her parents' blood-stained bodies, and the fire in her heart burned brighter. Without a word, she turned and walked away, leaving Bakugo alive but forever scarred. In the years that followed, Izumi became a legend. Some saw her as a hero, others as a villain. But to her, none of it mattered. She had taken her revenge, but at the cost of her innocence. Her Sharingan, a symbol of her pain and resolve, remained a constant reminder of the price she had paid. And yet, deep within her, a spark of hope lingered that one day, she might find peace in a world that had shown her none. Years passed, and the name, Crimson Shadow, became both a whispered legend and a dire warning. Izumi Midoriya had fully embraced the path of vengeance, cutting through the remnants of the organization that had torn her life apart. Her Sharingan had evolved into the Mangekyo, a symbol of the pain and sacrifices she had endured. With each battle, her power grew, but so did the darkness within her heart. One night, as Izumi stared at the cityscape from the rooftop of an abandoned building, she found herself haunted by memories. Her mother's warm smile, her father's quiet encouragement, the innocent dreams of becoming a hero, all of it seemed so far away. The Mangekyo's power came with a curse, and her vision had started to blur, an ever-present reminder of the cost of her revenge. But her work wasn't done. Izumi's next target was Endeavor, the #1 hero. She had uncovered evidence that the organization responsible for her parents' deaths had deep ties to the pro-hero system. Endeavor, while not directly involved, had turned a blind eye to their actions, prioritizing his rise to the top over exposing corruption. To Izumi, that made him guilty. She infiltrated Endeavor's agency under the cover of darkness. The building was heavily guarded, but they were no match for her Sharingan. She moved like a shadow, her crimson eyes predicting every move her enemies made before they even thought to attack. When she finally reached Endeavor's office, the hero was waiting for her. Flames danced around him, casting ominous shadows across the room. Izumi Midoriya, he said, his deep voice steady. I've heard of you. What do you want? Justice, Izumi replied coldly. For my family. For everyone you've allowed to suffer. Endeavor narrowed his eyes. You think you're the only one who's lost something. This path you're on, revenge will destroy you. I'm already destroyed, she said, activating her Mangekyo. Now it's your turn. The battle that followed shook the building to its core. Endeavor's flames roared, illuminating the night sky, but Izumi's Sharingan made her untouchable. She weaved through his attacks, forcing him into illusions that blurred the line between reality and nightmare. For every strike he landed, she retaliated with devastating precision. In the end, Endeavor fell to his knees, his flames extinguished. Izumi stood over him, her Mangekyo spinning ominously. You could have stopped them, she said, her voice trembling with suppressed rage. You could have saved so many lives. Endeavor looked up at her, his face etched with pain and regret. Maybe I could have. But what will you do when your revenge is complete? Who will you become then? His words struck a chord deep within her, but she pushed it aside. That's not your concern, she said, walking away and leaving him alive, just as she had with Bakugo. For the first time, doubt began to creep into Izumi's mind. As much as she tried to silence it, the voices of those she had spared, Bakugo, Endeavor, and others, lingered. Were they right? Was this path truly leading her anywhere, or was she simply digging herself deeper into darkness? Her answer came one fateful night when she encountered All Might. All Might had been searching for her, hoping to bring her back to the light. When he found her in an abandoned warehouse, her once bright green hair now dulled and her eyes glowing with the crimson curse of the Mangekyo, his heart broke. Izumi, he said, his voice heavy with sadness. You've gone too far. She turned to face him, her expression unreadable. I'm doing what you never could. I'm making them pay. This isn't justice, All Might said, stepping closer. It's self-destruction. Your mother wouldn't want this. At the mention of her mother, something inside Izumi snapped. Don't you dare speak about her. She shouted, her Sharingan blazing. You weren't there. You didn't save her. You didn't save anyone. All Might remained calm, his eyes filled with compassion. You're right. I failed you. But that doesn't mean you have to lose yourself. You can still be the hero you always dreamed of being. Tears welled in Izumi's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. I'm not a hero. I'm a weapon. And weapons don't stop until their purpose is fulfilled. All Might braced himself as Izumi charged at him, her speed and precision unmatched. The battle was fierce, but it wasn't a contest of strength, it was a battle for Izumi's soul. All Might didn't fight to defeat her, he fought to save her, to remind her of who she once was. In the end, it was her own pain that brought her to her knees. As All Might stood over her, bloodied and bruised, Izumi looked up at him, her vision blurring once more. I'm so tired, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. I don't know who I am anymore. All Might knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. You're Izumi Midoriya, and you're stronger than this. From that day forward, Izumi's journey took a new direction. She didn't abandon her Sharingan or the pain that had awakened it, but she began to seek redemption. She worked from the shadows, dismantling the remnants of the organization not out of vengeance, but to ensure no one else would suffer as she had. The road was long and unforgiving, but for the first time in years, Izumi felt a glimmer of hope. The Crimson Shadow wasn't just a force of destruction, she could also be a force of change. And perhaps, one day, she could forgive herself. Izumi's path to redemption was anything but easy. Her name, etched in fear and hatred, made it nearly impossible for her to be trusted. Heroes saw her as a rogue threat, and villains sought revenge for their fallen comrades. But she didn't falter. Each step she took was a battle, not just against her enemies but against the darkness inside her that whispered she could never change. One fateful evening, Izumi found herself in a ruined city, chasing leads on the organization's final remnants. Her vision had worsened, the Mangekyo taking its toll on her eyes. Every fight drained her more, and she knew it was only a matter of time before she went blind entirely. Yet, she pushed forward, knowing that she couldn't stop until the organization was destroyed. In the shadows of an abandoned skyscraper, Izumi confronted her last true adversary, Shigaraki Tamura. To her shock, she discovered he wasn't just another remnant of the organization, he had been its puppetmaster all along. The massacre of her family had been his way of experimenting with how far pain could awaken hidden potential. She had been nothing more than a test subject to him. Shigaraki smirked, his decayed hands twitching in anticipation. Ah, the Crimson Shadow herself. Do you know how fascinating you've been to watch? All that pain, all that power. It's a shame you've wasted it on foolish ideals. Izumi's Sharingan spun dangerously, her voice low and cold. You destroyed my family, used me like a tool. This ends now. Their battle was a clash of raw hatred and overwhelming power. Shigaraki's decay turned the battlefield into rubble, while Izumi's Sharingan pushed her to the limits of her abilities. Each strike was precise, her illusions weaving through his attacks to keep him off balance. But Shigaraki was relentless, and Izumi was weakening. As their fight raged on, Shigaraki taunted her. Your eyes, they're failing you, aren't they? Soon you'll be nothing but a blind fool. A weapon without a purpose. Izumi gritted her teeth, her vision now little more than a blur. But she refused to give in. Summoning every ounce of strength she had left, she activated her Mangekyo's most powerful technique, Tsukuyomi's Wrath. In an instant, Shigaraki was trapped in an illusion so vivid it mimicked eternity. He was forced to feel the pain of every life he had taken, every family he had torn apart, multiplied 1,000-fold. His screams echoed through the ruins as Izumi stood over him, her body trembling from the strain of her power. When the illusion broke, Shigaraki collapsed, his mind shattered. Izumi stood victorious, but the cost was devastating. Her vision went completely dark, the final toll of her Mangekyo Sharingan. Izumi wandered aimlessly through the rubble, blind and exhausted. For the first time, she felt truly lost. All her life, her path had been defined by pain and vengeance. Now that it was over, she didn't know who she was or where she belonged. It was then that a familiar voice called out to her. Izumi. She turned toward the sound, her heart skipping a beat. It was Momo Yaoyorozu, the one person who had never stopped believing in her, who had searched tirelessly for her despite Izumi's descent into darkness. Momo. Izumi's voice cracked, her walls breaking down. I can't see. I can't. Momo rushed to her side, gently taking Izumi's hands. It's okay. You don't have to do this alone anymore. For the first time in years, Izumi felt a warmth she thought she had lost forever. She collapsed into Momo's arms, tears streaming down her face as she finally allowed herself to grieve. In the months that followed, Momo became Izumi's anchor. Together, they worked to rebuild what had been broken, not just in the world, but in Izumi's heart. Though Izumi could no longer see, she learned to navigate the world with the help of her other senses, her instincts sharpened by years of battle. Momo also helped her uncover a way to restore her vision, the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Through the transplantation of another Sharingan, Izumi could regain her sight and remove the curse of blindness. But to do so, she would need someone willing to make the ultimate sacrifice. When Momo offered her own life, Izumi refused. I've lost too much already. I won't lose you too. Instead, they sought another way. Using Momo's intelligence and resources, they developed a serum that could stabilize Izumi's eyes without the need for sacrifice. Though imperfect, it allowed Izumi to regain fragments of her vision. As time passed, Izumi began to rebuild her life. She worked in the shadows, not as a weapon of vengeance, but as a protector of the innocent. The name Crimson Shadow took on a new meaning, not as a figure of fear, but as a symbol of hope for those who had been abandoned by the system. With Momo by her side, Izumi slowly began to heal. Though the scars of her past would never fully fade, she found solace in the idea that she could still make a difference. And in the quiet moments, when the weight of her journey threatened to crush her, Momo's presence reminded her that even in the darkest of shadows, there was still light. Kachan, Izumi murmured again, her voice laced with a mix of disbelief and bitterness. Bakugo stood a few paces away, explosions crackling faintly in his palms. His usual fiery bravado was tempered by something softer, regret, perhaps. Deku, he said, his tone more subdued than she had ever heard. We need to talk. This isn't the time, Izumi replied coldly, her Sharingan glowing faintly beneath her blindfold. There's a war happening. That's exactly why I'm here, Bakugo shot back, stepping closer. You've changed a lot, but so have I. I'm not here to fight you. I'm here to fight with you. Izumi's expression hardened. Why should I believe you? You were part of everything that ruined my life. Bakugo flinched at her words but didn't back down. I didn't know what they were doing. If I had, I would have stopped it. I was a stupid kid who didn't see past my own ego, but I've spent every day since trying to make up for it. Before Izumi could respond, an explosion shook the ground, and villains poured into the area. Bakugo turned back to her, his crimson eyes meeting hers. You can hate me all you want after this, but right now, people need us. Reluctantly, Izumi nodded. The two of them moved in perfect sync, their attacks complementing one another in a way that felt almost natural. Izumi's Sharingan predicted every move the villains made, allowing Bakugo to strike with devastating precision. Momo joined the fray, creating barriers and weapons to give them an edge. The three of them, together, were an unstoppable force. As the villains began to retreat, Izumi sensed something, or someone, watching them from afar. A chill ran down her spine as a familiar, malevolent presence stepped forward, Shigaraki Tamura. But this wasn't the Shigaraki she had defeated before. His body was stronger, his decay more powerful, and his eyes burned with a dark resolve. Did you really think it would end so easily? He sneered. Shigaraki raised his hand, unleashing a wave of decay that spread across the battlefield. Izumi and Momo barely managed to dodge as Bakugo countered with an explosion. "Midoriya," Shigaraki said, his voice dripping with venom. "You've been a thorn in my side for too long. Tonight, I finish what I started." Izumi activated her Sharingan, the faint glow intensifying as she prepared for the fight of her life. "You won't get another chance. The battle was unlike anything they had faced before. Shigaraki's decay threatened to consume everything, his power amplified by whatever dark force had saved him from their last encounter. Izumi pushed her body to its limits, her Sharingan predicting his movements, but it wasn't enough. She was blind, exhausted, and her body ached from years of strain. As the fight dragged on, Momo and Bakugo worked tirelessly to hold Shigaraki at bay, but it was clear they were losing ground. Izumi knew what had to be done. Summoning the last of her strength, Izumi activated her Mangekyo Sharingan's ultimate technique, Kamui's Redemption. The ability allowed her to trap Shigaraki in an alternate dimension, removing him from their world forever. But it came at a cost. Using the technique would drain the last remnants of her vision and potentially her life. Momo, seeing the strain on Izumi's face, rushed to her side. "Don't do this. There has to be another way." "There isn't," Izumi said, her voice steady but filled with sorrow. "This is my fight. My responsibility." Bakugo stepped forward, his face pale. "Deku, you don't have to throw your life away. We'll figure something out, together." Izumi shook her head. "I've carried this burden for too long. It ends now." With one final surge of power, Izumi unleashed Kamui's Redemption. The battlefield was engulfed in a blinding light as Shigaraki's body was pulled into the alternate dimension. His screams echoed as he disappeared, leaving behind only silence. As the light faded, Izumi collapsed, her vision completely gone. Momo caught her before she hit the ground, tears streaming down her face. Days later, Izumi awoke in a hospital bed, her body weak but alive. Momo sat beside her, holding her hand tightly. "You're alive," Momo whispered, relief flooding her voice. Izumi turned her head toward the sound, her empty eyes hidden behind a bandage. "Did it work?" Momo nodded, squeezing her hand. "Shigaraki is gone. For good." A faint smile crossed Izumi's lips. "Good. Then it was worth it." Bakugo entered the room, his usual scowl softened. "You're still a pain in the ass, you know that." Izumi chuckled weakly. "Takes one to know one." Though she had lost her sight and much of her strength, Izumi had gained something far greater, a family. With Momo and Bakugo by her side, she began a new chapter, not as a weapon of vengeance, but as a protector, a friend, and perhaps one day, a hero once again. Even in the darkness, Izumi found her light. Months passed, and Izumi's life slowly began to find balance. She was no longer the solitary figure driven by vengeance, but a leader of a growing movement to reshape hero society. Though her body bore the scars of her battles, and her blindness remained a constant reminder of her sacrifices, she found solace in the people who stood beside her. Momo had taken charge of the operations, using her brilliance to coordinate their missions and inspire others. Bakugo, though still rough around the edges, had become one of their fiercest defenders, willing to fight anyone who threatened the fragile peace Izumi had fought so hard to create. One evening, as the three of them sat together in their hidden base, the quiet was broken by the sound of laughter, Izumi's laughter. "You're actually learning to play nice, Kachan," Izumi teased, her head tilted in Bakugo's direction. "Don't push it, nerd," Bakugo retorted, though a small smirk tugged at his lips. "I'm just here to make sure you don't do something stupid again." Momo chuckled softly, sitting beside Izumi. "It's nice to see you smile." "Again," she said, her voice warm. Izumi reached out, her hand brushing Momo's. "It's because of you. Both of you. I couldn't have made it here without you." Momo's cheeks flushed, but she squeezed Izumi's hand gently. "You're stronger than you think, Izumi. You've always been. Despite the peace they had found, their work was far from over. The remnants of the organization Shigaraki had controlled were still out there, and corruption within hero society continued to fester. Izumi knew she couldn't rest, even if her body begged for it. But now, she had allies, family, who wouldn't let her bear the burden alone. One day, a young girl approached them during one of their covert missions. She had wide, curious eyes and clutched a small notebook to her chest. "Are you the Crimson Shadow?" she asked, her voice trembling. Izumi knelt, her blindfolded face turned toward the girl. "I was. But now, I'm just Izumi. How can I help you?" The girl hesitated before holding out her notebook. I want to be a hero, but everyone says I'm not strong enough." "But you're a hero, and you don't give up. Can you teach me?" Izumi smiled softly, her heart swelling with a warmth she hadn't felt in years. "Of course. I'll teach you everything I know." That moment marked the beginning of something new. Izumi, Momo, and Bakugo began training the next generation of heroes, focusing not just on strength, but on compassion, resilience, and the courage to stand against injustice. Their network grew, and the line between hero and vigilante blurred. People from all walks of life joined their cause, united by a shared belief that true heroism wasn't about fame or recognition but about making the world a better place, no matter the cost. Years later, Izumi stood atop a hill overlooking the rebuilt city. Though she could no longer see it, she could feel the hope that radiated from the people below. Momo stood beside her, their hands intertwined, while Bakugo stood a few steps away, arms crossed as he muttered something about sentimental crap. "Izumi," Momo said softly, her voice carrying the weight of everything they had been through. "Do you regret any of it?" Izumi shook her head. "Not anymore. I lost a lot, but I gained something even greater. A purpose. A family." Momo smiled, leaning her head against Izumi's shoulder. "And you've given the world hope again." As the wind carried their laughter across the hilltop, Izumi felt a peace she never thought she'd find. She may have started her journey in darkness, but now, she walked in light. And this time, she wasn't walking alone. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the city, Izumi, Momo, and Bakugo stood together, their bond unbreakable. They had faced their demons, both within and without, and emerged stronger for it. Their journey was far from over, but they were ready for whatever challenges lay ahead, united by a shared purpose and the unyielding hope for a brighter tomorrow. And that's it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this emotional and action-packed fanfic. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more awesome fanfics, and stay tuned for part 2, where the story continues with new twists, challenges, and epic moments. See you next time.